Good morning, Mexico City. I'm Janine Nel. I'm speaking to you from Cape Town, South Africa. I'm a director of Teach the Future in South Africa. I've been involved in futures work for the last few years, and about a year and a half ago, a colleague and I, Zahn Horrell, we started the South African chapter of the Teach the Future movement. We do primarily workshops for school learners, students, and young people around the country. And our next area of focus will be teachers and educators. So, and because we know how big the challenge is ahead of us, we, in the beginning of this year, trained an additional 8 facilitators to conduct workshops with us. They are all future study graduates. The University of Stellenbosch, where I also studied, is the only university in South Africa and also on the African continent that teaches futures studies. And because we knew that these people already had a history and a background in future skills, the application of the tools, etc., we invited them to become part of our organization in South Africa. So future skills and futures thinking in South Africa is a fairly new discipline. It's not something that's very well known. Scenario work, on the other hand, is quite well known in South Africa. We've had quite a few scenario workshops, especially in the political arena, where the old apartheid regime went through a whole series of scenarios before the country transitioned to the democracy that it is today. In terms of practicing foresight, in terms of applying that in a business context, that is still quite new. So it is quite difficult for us to introduce it because people don't know it. We have, of course, a number of socioeconomic challenges in South Africa, which makes it rather urgent that we do bring a new mindset, a new way of thinking to especially young people in our country if we want to create any sort of future where they can prosper or even just create sustainable lives. We are, I think, the second most unequal country in the world. Very high Gini coefficient. Some stats in the presentation for you. So how we compare South Africa, Mexico, US, Canada. It is an enormous challenge and it's not sustainable, especially if you look at our youth context, where we have the highest number of young people between the ages of 20 and 24 in the world that are not in training, that are not in university, they are not working. So we have millions of young people in this country who are doing nothing. They have no real potential, no real future plans. They at the time of their life when they should be contributing to society, contributing to the economy, and they don't have that opportunity. So it's rather important for us. In our slide deck, we've got a cute little graphic where a youngster with a little flower sitting, utopian future, dystopian future, utopian future. That's not what we want. The future is not a lucky draw as to just take what you get. We have the opportunity to influence and co-create the futures that we want, that we prefer. But it doesn't just happen. It's based on our actions, on our decisions, and the impacts of what we do. And that is why we do it. What do we teach? Well, we do workshops. I know in the US and several other countries, future skills and future studies is part of the curriculum. We are not that fortunate. It's something that we are working on in South Africa. It's something we desperately want to institute. But we have been, unfortunately, most of the time given a one-day space. Most times 5 or 6 hours that we have with these youngsters. It's our only point of contact. We are working on some sort of mobile app where we can do follow-ups with them. But at this stage, we have one contact. It's usually a one-day workshop. So we've taken the curriculum that Professor Bishop has developed and we've literally condensed it into a one-day program. What we do find is that we custom make our workshops to specific needs of either a community or the school that we're working with. And we tell them what is future thinking. The very important thing is that we say to them there are many alternative futures. There is not just one, and they have to understand that. And we use that in practice. We also look at things like, what in terms of how the world works. But the other very important thing for us, and especially in a country like South Africa where we have 11 official languages, we have so many people from so many backgrounds in terms of cultural tribes, etc., that the more diverse your community and the more diverse your thinking and the people that you think with, the better the result you would have. So how do we structure our courses? We talk about change, we talk about the world around us, we talk about what drives change, what makes it happen, we talk about our biases and lenses, and then we look at the future and the multiple alternative features that are available, possibly use features, but how do we create alternatives and multiple alternatives for ourselves? Especially in a time like today, what we've been focusing on the last few months, we've been fortunate to do a few online trainings with student groups, and we've focused especially on change and disruption and how to use change. We've been asked by university to work with their students because they were very overwhelmed, very unsure, very uncertain, and quite frankly scared about the world at the moment and what their place in it is, and they couldn't identify with that anymore. So we've worked on disruption and how to identify it and what do we do about it, and very importantly, how do we spot opportunities within that uncertainty and within that seemingly really frightening time. And why do we do that? Well, it's all connected. We do a lot of work in our workshops around the STEEP categories, the social, technological, economical, environmental, political. We analyze newspaper clippings according to the STEEP categories, and we look at impacts and what if this happens and what if that happens? How does it impact? Because ultimately, when you're at a crossroads that has multiple opportunities, you have to be able to say, I'm going to try and go this way. It's not about flipping a coin. It's about making informed decisions based on the things you see on the horizon, based on you thinking through the possible futures, the possible consequences of all those actions. So I thought I'll talk a bit about the kind of workshops we do in South Africa. We do workshops for young people, which is, I believe, you refer to elementary school. We call it primary school, which is around about the 8 to 13-year-old age. Those workshops are quite interactive. In fact, all the workshops are, but these are especially interactive. We alternate between indoors, working in little groups, going outside, playing with soccer balls, playing with a ball, literally throwing from one another to say, what happens if, and you throw the ball and they add on, and they throw the ball to somewhere else and they add on. So it's very practical. It's thinking on your feet, and we try and make it as fun as possible. And I've included a beautiful slide where the one youngster drew for us afterwards with the, we did a little exercise on banning plastic bags and the impact on the environment, on jobs and people, etc., where he drew a beautiful fish with no plastic cups and said, I love future studies. And that, I think, is one of those things that just makes it all worthwhile. We also do high school, which you call secondary school, with youngsters where we really unpack the past, the present, and the future, and we look at how things change, how they might change going forward. We talk about disruptions, what happens if this happens. We formed relationships with groups, other groups in South Africa, one of them the Kutla Wanong group, who focuses on maths and science skills and teaching in South Africa. We work with a lot of their learners. They have about 7,000 learners in the country that need training. So we are hard at work trying to source some CSR funding to be able to facilitate this. But one of the things I wanted to maybe just mention is in terms of education, and we've already done so well, we have so many assets within our community. For me, Teach the Future and our role as futurists is not about teaching the future, it's about facilitating those good discussions, about saying what happens next, how do we help and facilitate people think, and especially young people who are so creative, so imaginative, they can think it. But they also need to build the roadmap on how to achieve that. We as a futures community need to start expanding our community little by little. Pull our community in, pull our youngsters in, get them to think with us. What do they need from their education? How does it need to be evolved? How does it need to be changed in order for them to be ready for the world of work as and when it happens? And how do we want that world to look? So for us, we have all the tools and methodologies to help facilitate those discussions. And that is how I see our role in terms of education. Because if we move those discussions, then the change within education will happen organically. It will evolve from the inside out, rather than us putting pressure from the outside, saying, well, education is no good. Well, We have wonderful teachers. There are wonderful systems. They need to change. And perhaps if the change comes from the inside, that could possibly be the most effective way of addressing the education that we need for 2030, for 2040, for 2050. And the most important reason that we create a future for the young people of our countries and the world where they can prosper and where they can provide for their children one day. Because ultimately, that is our aim. So I wish you well. I hope you have a wonderful conference, and I look forward to meeting some of you, many of you, in future. Thank you.